Please listen carefully.
Welcome to Club End 1645, and today we're back in Wiltshire and we're at a little village called East Knoyle in Wiltshire, and we're outside St Mary's Church. Now, East Knoyle obviously is the famous place of the birthplace of Christopher Wren, the architect who did St Paul's, and he was born here and his father was called Dr Christopher Wren, and in 1623 he was the rector of this church behind me, and then he went to London. In the Civil War broke out while he was there. He was the Dean of Windsor, and he came back to this area in 1644, and he was involved with the club business. And what we're going to do is go round by the side of this church and I'll tell you a little about the club business. It was in East Knoyle at the time. So follow me.
Gathered the afternoon into my glass. I got 100 proof booze and assembled a crash. Repeatable pattern I'll be terrible art. The seasonal hazards, baby, making it hot. There's no way to obey all that's in
Start, is it going?
I'm running, ready to go.
Right, here we are on the other side of St Mary's Church, and we want to talk about Dr Christopher Wren, who in 1645 subscribed to the club business. And how do we know that? We have two accounts, and one of the accounts is from a guy called R. Andrew Marshman, and I have the account over here in my notes. Right, Andrew Marshman, he swore that Dr Wren not only encouraged his parishioners to insist, but when Mr Thomas Bennett of Pithouse, Thomas Bennett, and we spoke about Thomas Bennett before, he was the man at Wardle Castle, the elderly gentleman who got mixed up in the club business in the Civil War and was judged on this club business later on. But he was an elderly gentleman, and at this time Dr Christopher Wren was an elderly gentleman also, so these guys were being dragged into the Civil War. But it goes on to say, Mr Thomas Bennett of Pithouse came to Knoyle to invite their cooperation, and Dr Wren seconded Mr Bennett's remarks, and even went forth himself with Mr Bennett afterwards, carrying a caliber, which is a gun. But I think he was off just to do a bit of hunting in the area, because I can't imagine them shooting off to shoot anybody in East Knoyle, because they'd be shooting clubmen, and that wouldn't be good. But there is a second account, and this account is from a guy called Dominic Randall, and there's no punctuation in this account, so you have to bear with me. And it says that Dr Wren had expressed so desired an opposition, I take it full stop, to the club business, that the parish of Knoyle did not list themselves. Now, all I can say about that is, like, I think he didn't want the parish of Knoyle, the parishioners of Knoyle, to be in opposition to the clubmen, because it seems pretty ridiculous if he's 1 minute he's talking about joining the clubmen and the next minute he's in opposition to them. But that's what I take from that. The Civil War actually treated Dr Christopher Wren quite harshly at the time, and he was pulled in front of a Folkestone committee for heretical practice. And there's an account of it in the church, so it's worth coming to these places like East Knoyle and these other clubmen sites just to pick up the local history in the area, because they always do these nice little pamphlets, and there's lots of local information in it which I haven't read through the archive sections I've been looking at. So it goes to state here, the Civil War treated Dean Wren and his family harshly. His Windsor home was sacked twice. A buried church plate was dug up from his hiding place in the garden, and both the records of the Order of the Garter and his prized harpsichord were stolen, although he was able to buy them back later. Even more seriously, he was fined, hauled before the Folkestone Commission, which I mentioned, sitting at Longford Castle and accused of heretical practices. His plasterer Robert Brockway from Frome St Quintin was called to give evidence and managed to portray himself as an employee, merely following instructions. The trial was clearly politically motivated, but unexpected support came from 4 political opponents, one of whom John Danvers. Now, John Danvers signed the Charles I death warrant, and obviously if he was a friend of Dr Christopher Wren, he was no... Well, he might have been a royalist, we don't know. People were changing sides left, right and centre. But anyway, John Danvers was one of the guys who supported him, and he was joined by James Herbert, the son of the Earl of Pembroke, William Steffand and John Evelyn, not the diarist. Now, these 4 gentlemen sent a letter to their Wiltshire colleagues, and in the letter they noted that the Dean, while being employed by Parliament, had suffered many violences and plundering, had contributed very large sums of money in the service of the state, had been a painful labourer in the work of the ministry these 30 years, and was far from meriting the doom of sequestration. Sequestration. I can't say that word, I've got new teeth in. It's really bothering me. But sequestration. But the letter was to no avail really, because although the charge of heresy was dropped, the fine went up. And he'd already spent 6 months in prison the year before also. So he was also replaced here by a man called William Clifford, and he saw his days out at his son-in-law's rectory in Oxfordshire. So there you are, Dr Christopher Wren, the clubmen of East Knoyle, and Thomas Bennett, obviously of Pith House, which we shall go and have a cup of tea at in a minute.
Oh, that sounds good.
It's just up the road from here, and so is Wardour Castle, so it's all in the immediate area. So come out to these places and have a visit, because they are cracking.
They are.
They're nice. They're nice to come out here. It'll be a good fun coming out to these places. But keep an eye on the website. Clubmen 1645, work in progress. On a quick note, just before we leave, I want to go into the church quickly and show you some plaster work, because some plaster work was commissioned there by Dr Christopher Wren, and it got him into lots of trouble, hence the charges, the heretical charges later on for as such, because he was a Laudian at the time, and that was frowned upon, and he did this plaster work in this church where the parliamentary troops came in and knocked the heads off the cherubs, with the Christ's ascension into heaven being watched by the apostles. But they got into lots of trouble, and you can go in there and see the heads of these cherubs being knocked off, which the parliamentary troops did at a later stage in the Civil War. But there you go, just a quick note before we leave. We'll show you the plasterwork in that church which got Dr Christopher Wren in all this trouble. Right, we're in the chancel in St Mary's, who's just popped in here very quickly to show you some damage that was done to the cherubs here by parliamentary troops when they stormed in the church. Got hold of Robert Brockway?
Yes.
Is he the plasterer?
Yes.
They got hold of Robert Brockway. The plasterer pulled him aside and temporarily grabbed hold of Dr Christopher Wren and held him prisoner temporarily for a spell. But they came in here and knocked the head off these cherubs here, which show Christ's ascension into heaven, being watched by the apostles at the time in this chancel. And she's going to pan around now and show the plasterwork. We're still in East Knoyle, and we've come up to Windmill Hill. And from Windmill Hill you can see Duncliffe in front of you, and to your left you can see Shaftesbury. And obviously Duncliffe is where the clubmen rendezvoused in 1645 on August the 4th, and on August the 3rd in Shaftesbury, where the arrests were made with Fleetwood coming in with his horse and such. But it's worth coming up to this hill point at Windmill Hill, because you can see a couple of the primary clubmen sites.